I'm Ashley, and up until the day I turned 33, the accounting firm I worked for advanced the transition from PC to Mac, which was the most exciting moment of my life. Not very exciting, is it? But at a friend's birthday celebration, everything turned around. That evening, I was uncomfortable in my too tight dress and found myself standing in the corner of a living room, drinking a soda. It was too loud to have a conversation over, yet just right for him. Ryan. Probably because he was taller than most, he noticed me. With a confidence that made my heart skip a beat, he approached. "Hey, you're Ashley, right?" Even over the booming bass, he could clearly be heard. "Well, yes. And you?" I took a sip of my drink and tried not to smile. "Ryan, I noticed you around. Is it okay if I join you?" He simply stood next to me without waiting for a response. "Not an issue at all," I answered, almost getting lost in the newest pop tune that was blasting from the speakers. "So, Ashley, what brought you here tonight?" He leaned in to ask. His eyes were intense, yet his tone was lighthearted. "Simply in town to honor Sarah's birthday. You've known her for a while?" "Yes, I attended college with her. I keep getting invited to these activities by her. I can't refuse, can I?" We chuckled, and it seemed simple and natural. "I understand. She and I collaborate. It's difficult to say no to her." "You mean an accountant?" he asked. "You're correct." I said, joking that numbers are my game, even though I didn't typically find spreadsheets amusing. He smiled and said, "Sounds thrilling," though I wasn't sure if he was kidding. "Oh, without a doubt. The accounting industry is all big stakes and crazy events." We chuckled once again. Speaking with someone who actually wanted to hear what I had to say, he made me feel comfortable. It was novel, thrilling, and a little unsettling. He nodded to the backyard and said, "You want to take some fresh air?" I nodded, happy to get away from the noise. The cool air outside felt good. "So, what's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" I asked, attempting to sound more assured than I actually was. His smile turned his eyes into crow's feet. "Just looking for a good time, I guess, and finding anybody cool to hang out with," he replied. We discussed a wide range of topics, including movies, novels we enjoyed, and his interest in graphic design despite working in a corporate job he didn't enjoy. It seemed as though we had been friends for a long time. He took out his phone as the night went on. "I'd like your phone number. Ashley, I truly would like to see you again." Not used to this kind of attention, I hesitated, yet there was something about him that felt right. I answered, "Sure," and entered my number onto his phone. His whole face lit up with a smile. "Good, I'll give you a call. Just the two of us should go out." I choked out, "Sounds good," as my stomach turned over. A part of me was still in shock that this was my reality now as I watched him go. 33 wasn't that horrible after all. Perhaps that was only the beginning of something very special. The days that followed Ryan's call seemed to fly by. I was getting ready for our first date before I realized it. Given my lack of knowledge in this field, my anxiety was all over the place. I hoped that my plain blue dress would work, so I went with that. At precisely 7, Ryan came to get me. It wasn't a fancy car, but it was a well-maintained sedan that fit him. He gave me a smile as soon as I walked in that could make you wince. "You look great, Ashley," I murmured. "Thanks." My face presumably as red as a tomato. "You look good, too." He knew this quaint little French spot for dinner. Although the food smelled fantastic, my stomach felt queasy. He ordered spaghetti with a gourmet sauce, while I chose a simple marinara. He said, skillfully spinning his spaghetti onto his fork, "So, Ashley, tell me something about you that no one else knows." Toying with my food more than actually eating it, I laughed. "Well, I'm rather uninteresting, but I guess not everyone knows I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under 60 seconds. His eyebrows went up. Are you serious? That is very cool right now. You must show it to me at some point. I responded, sure, as I began to loosen up. How about you? Any undiscovered skills? I'm pretty good at making breakfast burritos. He grinned. Best you'll ever have. I'll believe anything you say. I teasingly said, perhaps you can prove it sometime. I felt like I was precisely where I was intended to be for the first time in a long time, as the discussion flowed. The following few weeks passed quickly. We spent a lot of time together. Ryan would see me after work, and we would have lunch together close to his workplace. He took me to some of his favorite areas in the town, little hidden places I had never seen before, I had not previously noticed. It felt like a first-time encounter with the city. When he asked me to meet his parents, David and Claire, things became very serious. Their modest, comfortable home was furnished with mementos and tiny decor. From the moment we entered, Claire gave me a hug. Her words, "Oh, we've both heard so much about you, my dear," squeezed my shoulders. Ryan remarked, "She's lovely," and I could tell he was happy. After we sat down to dinner, we could not stop talking. Ryan tells us that you're an accountant, so Ashley. David handed me the potatoes and added, "That must be interesting." It has its instances, I answered back. Mostly just numbers, but I like the arrangement of it. And how's your family? Inquiring with genuine interest was Claire. Thanks. They're good. Despite his busy schedule as a businessman, my dad has shown me a lot of support. Though everything happened quickly, it seemed correct. Everything in my life seemed to be building towards this encounter. Ryan felt that I was finally being recognized for more than just your average accountant. A few months into our brief romance, we were strolling along the riverfront one evening. The lake mirrored the city lights, producing a lovely image. He said, "Ashley, I've been thinking," then paused and turned to face me. With a racing pulse, I said, "Yeah? I want to stop waiting right now. Although it's moving quickly. Will you still marry me?" My entire life abruptly transformed. No question, no hesitation, just a straightforward yes. "Ryan, I'll marry you." And the tornado didn't end there. I showed my father Ryan shortly after that. He warmed up to Ryan right away, enjoying his candor and clear affection for me. It meant the world to me when Dad stated, "He's a good man, Ashley," endorsing me. Thus, we tied the knot. Our wedding was small scale and not overly fancy, but it was ideal for us. I never would have thought that I would come to love the way I looked in my wedding dress. I shared my happiness with friends and family by posting pictures on social media while grinning broadly. After the wedding, things in life gained up speed instead of slowing down. Ryan made a huge suggestion before I had a chance to enjoy our bliss as newlyweds. "Hey, Ashley," he said one night in our small apartment as we were opening another box of wedding presents. "How about we move in with my family?" I stopped and held a mug of coffee. "Staying with your parents?" He gave a quiet nod. Moving in with the in-laws made sense, but that was sitcom territory. "Are you positive they'd want us there all the time?" "With no doubt," he told me. "Mom has been making references to it ever since we became engaged. Hurry, it will be enjoyable." We arrived at his parents' house 3 weeks later, our life neatly packed into several boxes. Before we had even gotten out of the car, Ryan's mother, Claire, was waving from the porch. She pulled me into an embrace that was a little too tight and said, "Oh, Ashley, we're so pleased to have you both here." Ryan's father, David, gave him a pat on the back. "Son, welcome home. And you as well, Ashley." The home was comfortable and filled to overflowing with furnishings that gave the impression of being in the 1973 museum. Even though I was trying not to smile, I could already feel the loss of our tiny flat. Ryan sensed my reluctance. He muttered, "It's going to be great. You'll see," while we were carrying boxes inside. The initial days required some getting used to. Claire would frequently stop by our room to inquire about our needs and hover about. She chirped, "Just making sure you're relaxed," and I tried not to wince at the invasion of my personal space. David, Claire, Ryan, and I sat down to dinner one evening. It was an extremely boring conversation until Ryan dropped another bomb. He nonchalantly said, "So, the house needs some major maintenance," in between slices of meatloaf. My mashed potatoes caused me to choke. "Mending?" "Indeed. The plumbing is archaic, and the roof is a mess," he remarked. David gave a somber nod. Ryan said, averting my eyes, "We were thinking that maybe we could all put in for the costs." I cast a quick peek at Claire, who seemed suddenly rather intrigued by her dish. "All of us?" "Well, I just got a salary cut at work," said Ryan, "so I'm a bit tight at the moment." It was there. A knot started to grow in my stomach. I managed to respond, "I'll see what I can do." But I really wanted to say much more. With tears welling up in her eyes, Claire brightened up. "Oh, Ashley, that would be so beneficial. You truly are an angel." The following few weeks were a haze of repairs and contractors. While Claire raved about how great the house was looking, I scribbled checks and grinned through my teeth. David gave me a backslap. "You're really a member of the family now, Ashley." "Yes, a member of the family, the portion that covers all expenses." After making yet another round of costly decisions, one particularly taxing day, I was really exhausted. I was so tired that I fell onto our bed. Ryan entered and sat down next to me. He seemed nearly real when he said, "Thanks for handling all this, Ashley." Lying while gazing at the ceiling, "It's fine. I just wasn't expecting how much it would be." He gave my hand a squeeze. "It will all pay off. I take it this is for our future." "Our future," I repeated, unsure of whose future we were really creating. Thinking about whether moving in was the correct choice, I couldn't help but wonder as I laid there, listening to Ryan's regular breathing. But now there was no turning back. I had to persevere through it at any costs because I was in this deep. The house looked amazing after the renovations, like something from a magazine. Even though I was struggling financially, I felt a little proud of what I had. Just the four of us planned a modest dinner party to celebrate. That's when things suddenly turned unexpectedly. We were laughing and telling stories while eating dinner. Then Claire was silent, and the room felt very heavy. With tearful eyes, she glanced at David and then at us. Her voice faltered. "We need to share something important." Ryan and I looked at each other. "What's going on?" With a knot in my stomach, I asked. David inhaled deeply. "The residence has a high mortgage. If we don't pay off our $300,000 debt within 3 months, the bank may seize it." My fork clanked against my dish. "What are you trying to say? All of the repairs were recently paid for?" Claire burst into tears. "We were ashamed and thought we could manage it, but after the repairs and everything, there's just no way." It was as though I was dreaming. Everything, cash and labor, went toward a house that wasn't even safe. "So what are you going to do?" My tone came out harsher than I had intended. "Well," Ryan said, averting his gaze from me, "I thought maybe, Ashley, you could talk to your dad." "Are you serious?" With a raised voice, I snapped, "Ask my father for $300,000? It's only that this house needs to be safe." "For our future," Ryan begged. The more loudly Claire sobbed, the more I felt like an enemy in this strange play. "Please, this is our house, Ashley. We've lived in this place for decades." Though I was incensed, the cries and beseeching exhausted me. I mumbled, feeling stuck. "I'll think about it." At last. I reluctantly called my dad the following day to explain the circumstances. I was surprised when he said he would help, but with one caveat. "Ashley, I'll give you the money, but only after we have a written contract and a receipt. I insist on having everything recorded," he stated. Ryan was not happy when I told him about my dad's illness. Why must everything be so formal? Does he not just trust us? Ryan, it's $300,000. He's simply being cautious because it's a lot of money, I countered, sensing our separation getting wider. He'll get his documents, mumbled Ryan, evidently frustrated. The money was transferred and the paperwork was completed. Relieved, Claire and David thanked me nonstop. But something had shifted between Ryan and myself. Something was colder than it had been. Tragedy came just when I thought things couldn't get any worse in my life. "Ashley, it's Lisa," she gasped and shook her voice over the phone. "Your father suffered a cardiac arrest. It's not good." My gut fell with my heart. "What? What's up with him?" "Honey, he didn't make it. I apologize so much," she muttered. I almost let the phone fall out of my hand. "No, that's not possible," I muttered, experiencing numbness. Ryan was waiting for me in the doorway when I hung up the phone. "What's wrong?" he said in a quiet voice. I managed to say, "My dad, he's gone." But then everything inside of me collapsed, and I began to cry. Ryan approached me and wrapped his arm around me, but it didn't feel familiar. He said, "I'm sorry, Ashley." And it seemed serious, but I couldn't really hear him because I was too overcome with sadness. I returned home earlier than normal, exhausted from yet another long day of arranging funerals and interacting with the agency. I heard conversations coming from the living room as soon as I slid my key into the front door, even though I thought the place would be quiet. It was Ryan speaking to his parents, his tone brimming with resentment and contempt. "I'm at my limit now. It's driving me crazy to live with her. It's simply too much from her," Ryan grumbled. "Ryan, you have to hold on a little while longer," his mother, who is normally so kind and compassionate, said in a stern whisper. "We must decide what to do with the receipts your father-in-law possessed. Ashley now has them, so the sooner I go, the better. I'll take those receipts and destroy them, and then I'll begin anew with the wealthy beauty I previously mentioned to you." Ryan's tone was so cold and calculating that it sent shivers down my spine. While I was grieving for my father, the people I believed to be trustworthy were secretly scheming against me. I came to see that the family I was living with wasn't the caring one I had assumed I would marry into. Rather, they viewed me as a means of solving their financial problems. Shock and rage blended together, but I knew I had to remain composed. I interrupted their plotting with a loud door slam, as though I had just walked in. "You're back early, Ashley. Oh, what was the outcome of the funeral arrangements?" With a sudden change in tone, Claire's eyes widened with false innocence. With a twisted stomach, I forced a grin. "It's all coming in place," I said, attempting to remain calm. They exchanged brief glances while I was speaking, their faux concern on their features. Knowing their true colors made my skin crawl, but I recognized that it wouldn't help to show my cards at this point. I had to be shrewd, guard what was really mine, and maybe pursue legal action for their dishonesty. The funeral was solemn, with whispers of sympathy and a heavy heart. However, the true nature of the family I married into became apparent as the ceremony came to an end, and we went back to Ryan's parents' home. Ryan's mood changed while we sat in the living room drinking tepid coffee. His typically endearing exterior gave way to something darker. He chuckled icily, turned to face me, and dropped the bomb. "Ashley, get your stuff packed. You must leave. I've moved on to someone else, someone superior." It should have felt like a smack to hear his remarks, but I faked to be shocked. Claire laughed sarcastically before I could reply, saying, "We've really had enough of you, darling. We tolerate you only to get your money." "What about the house?" With a shaky voice, I questioned, "The house that I paid to fix? The $300,000 I spent on it?" Claire chuckled even more, as though I had just cracked the year's greatest joke. "Oh, my dear, we own this place. Here, you are insignificant." Ryan grinned more broadly. "And those invoices you take such pride in? Burned them after finding them in your dad's house. They have vanished." I gave them a brief time to think they had won. However, I couldn't resist laughing out loud. They seemed confused by my response, and their smiles wavered. "What's the reason behind your laughter? What do you find funny?" Ryan insisted. Even when I brushed away a tear, I continued to laugh. "You three really are pitiful. You think you're really intelligent?" "The receipts you destroyed?" I said again. "They were duplicates. My attorney has the actual ones covered." Their faces lost their color. Ryan's conceit gave way to fear. "There's nothing you can prove," he stumbled. "I can and I will," I shot back, maintaining a solid and steady tone. "Now, I'd like my money back, all of it, or I'll call the cops." David and Ryan exchanged a look as anxiety took the place of their earlier assurance. Normally audacious and assertive, David started pleading, "Ashley, please, let's talk about this. We can work things out." The talks with Ryan and his parents took longer than I had anticipated, but at least I had the upper hand now that the truth was out. They were obviously attempting to use every tactic to get the conditions to work in their favor, but I wasn't about to back down. During one of our numerous conversations around their now-binding kitchen table, I firmly said, "In exchange for the money, the house gets transferred to my name. That's the situation. No more games, please." At last, they gave in. We all decided that formalizing and legalizing everything was the best course of action. I demanded that everything be verified with the appropriate paperwork and certified by an attorney. "I want no corner cut," I said. There was tension in the air in the lawyer's office as documents were notarized and signed. I kept a close eye on every signature to make sure there was no possibility of more fraud. After all was said and done, I gathered up the transfer paperwork and turned to Ryan's mother, who appeared defeated but still retained a trace of her haughtiness. I held up the documents and said, "I'll be storing these in a safe place," before putting them in a folder, just to ensure no one is tempted to pull any tricks. The divorce process was simple after the formalities were taken care of. Ryan was silent, none of his previous arrogance remaining. I felt as though a burden had been lifted when the last papers were signed, marking the end of a chapter. As I stood on the doorstep of my now completely owned home, I observed Ryan, his parents, and their belongings being loaded into a rental van. Their walk was sluggish and the atmosphere somber. I couldn't help but have a mixture of happiness and sadness. Although it wasn't how I had envisioned my marriage ending, it was the best thing that could have happened. After things calmed down and I started to relish my newfound tranquility, word of Ryan's predicament reached me via friends. It seems that things weren't always better on the other side. Shortly after our divorce, his lover had left him, and his parents had moved into a little apartment that was much smaller than their cozy home. It appeared that revenge had reached them sooner than I had anticipated. They were obviously trying to find a way back into my life, or at least back into my house, because they were reaching out to me and inundating me with calls and messages despite their circumstances. But I had had enough of their lies. I instantly blacklisted them on all social media platforms and blocked their phone numbers. Cutting the last ties that bound us felt freeing. One afternoon, I was reading quietly in my living room when someone knocked on my door. Looking through the spy hole, I noticed Ryan standing there, looking pitiful and clutching a bunch of flowers. I laughed at its sheer bravado. As I opened the door, I couldn't contain my laughter when I saw him. "Are you serious, Ryan? Roses?" I said, unable to contain my laughter. He shifted nervously, as if the bouquet were going to wither away with him. "Ashley, I've come to a lot of realizations. I was incredibly incorrect. Do you recall when you told me I disgusted you?" I broke off, not trying to hide my disgust as I leaned against the doorframe. "Ryan, what changed? Out of choices?" I went on, the laughter turning into a sharp edge. With a look of embarrassment on his face, he looked down. I committed errors. However, I've come to set things right," he said, sounding almost imploring. I shook my head, wishing I could take sympathy for him. "Very nearly. Ryan, you're not here to put things right. All you want is to return to your comfy life. But hey, what do you know? That life has passed away. Not in your favor." As if my words were blows to the body, his expression slumped and he stepped back. "Ashley, please put it away," I snapped at him. "I desire that you depart. Never return here. We're through. Forever." Ryan remained motionless for one additional moment, his optimism clearly waning. Then he turned and went away, his shoulders bent in defeat, without saying another word. I felt a wave of comfort and finality as I turned back to my book. I grinned to myself as I felt the house's calm embrace me like a cozy blanket. It was such a sharp contrast to the chaos that had previously occupied this area. All of the continual commotion, anxiety, and dishonesty had vanished. I could at last breathe deeply now that my chest was free of the burden of worry. For once, I was content in living my life how I wanted it. I surveyed the space, noticing the serene ambiance. The warmth of the sun shone through the windows, bathing everything in its radiance. Now that I genuinely owned this place, I realized how much I adored it. The walls, which had before been the scene of plots and conflicts, now seemed to resound peacefully and contentedly. I recalled how stuck I had felt throughout those days of upheaval and deceit. I had lost so much to Ryan and his family, both financially and emotionally. But now they are permanently gone from my life. A bunch of flowers or polite conversation couldn't alter it. Their game of manipulation was ended. Resuming my tea, I felt victorious as I turned back to my book. I had experienced heartbreak and betrayal, but I had come out stronger. I had reclaimed my life and my destiny. My current state of peace was greatly valued and well earned. I was really free now, free to live my life whatever I pleased, free from dishonesty and lies. The horizon opened up in front of me, brimming with prospects. I grinned once more, confident that I was prepared